Well, let's talk about GE. A
Okay.
little bit about what your time, your 22 years, right?
Right.
Okay. Um, okay. When you started then,
Hmm.
Jack was relatively new, you were new, um, and GE was transitioning from am I correct in saying a manufacturing company to a services
And technology.
and technology?
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
Now you're in this new position and you have to make the public aware of this new expanded role of General Electric. What was that like? Were there challenges?
Well, yeah, there were challenges because, to begin with, one of the things that G was doing, this is Jack. I mean, you have to understand Jack. He's very strong-willed, strong-minded, high energy, decisive, and he figures things out. He's very strategic and very tactical both. He's just very, very smart. And he saw before anybody how global the world was getting and how competitive things were. And so we were going to get out of businesses that weren't big money-making businesses for us. And we were going to close down factories that weren't efficient. And we were going to manufacture things maybe in Mexico rather than in California. And so in 1982, GE closed down a steam iron plant in Ontario, California, that, and the work was going to be sent out of the country. And that wound up on 60 Minutes because no one had ever done that before. It was the first time a healthy company had shut down a factory just to move the work out of the country. So, as I said, it was such news that it made 60 Minutes, and so the world quickly learned what was happening at GE, but not in the nicest possible way. They were seeing the factories being shut down, some old line GE businesses such as housewares. Everybody thinks of, people still think GE makes toaster ovens and irons. They haven't in 25 years. GE sold the business, but people thought that, God, GE was selling its birthright by selling that business and moving all these jobs, shutting down all these factories. And so it was pretty bad right then. I mean, and as a matter of fact, shortly after I joined the company, cover story in Fortune magazine was toughest boss in America. And it was Jack, because he was doing this kind of stuff. So that's kind of where I started. I started with this, and so it then became a question of trying to educate, not just the media, our own employees. A very important audience is your own employees, which you never should forget. So it was our own employees, it was the media, it was Wall Street, it was government agencies. I mean, there were a lot of constituencies involved here. And the most important thing in this is to tell everybody the same thing. I think a lot of times people think they can tell their employees one thing and tell Wall Street something else, and they'll never find out. Not true, especially today. We'll talk about that later, I suspect, about what it's like today, this 24/7 world. So, so that was quite a challenge, and I just think we did it by a consistent message, and also we began to get results, and other companies began to copy GE, which I think gave it credibility. You know, it'd be tragic for some of these little towns, you know, where the only game in town was a GM factory or a GE factory or an IBM factory or something. I mean, tragic for these little towns. But for the greater enterprise to survive and for America to stay competitive, otherwise you'd have a country here with buying nothing that was made and sold by a U.S. company. That it'd all be, you know, companies from Southeast Asia and Latin America. So that was quite an interesting time. The you know, educating, I would say, communicating and educating all these audiences about what we were doing and why we were doing it.
What was your best accomplishment? What are you most proud of that you've done in your lifetime, your professional lifetime? And it doesn't have to be professional. What was it?
Probably, this is going to sound weird. I just think the fact that I made my parents really proud of me. I grew up, in pretty simple circumstances. Neither of my parents went to high school. Um, my my mom was, stay-at-home wife and mother, and my dad was a policeman in a small town. And so I just, I worked hard. Obviously, I was lucky that I'm reasonably intelligent, but I worked hard at everything I did, whether I was a checkout girl in the supermarket when I was in high school, or a kid reporter working 80 hours a week. Worked hard, but I think that the fact that my father died earlier, he didn't see all my success, but my mother did, and I was her little girl, and she was just so proud of it.
Oh.
Yeah. Well, as far as I said, the thing I feel proudest about is that I made my parents so proud. But as far as professionally, I was trying to think what thing professionally, because I've been involved with so many. And the thing that I think I'm proudest of is that in December following 9/11, I convinced GE to fund the Twin Tower of Light thing down here at the tip of Manhattan. And the idea was conceived by a guy named Kent Barwick, who was then chairman of the Municipal Art Society, president of the Municipal Art Society. Kent was a very close friend of mine at Syracuse. And we actually worked together on the daily newspaper at Syracuse. And he was down here as president of the Municipal Art Society, and I was, at that point, head of the GE Foundation. And he came up with the idea of the Twin Towers of Light, but they needed a lot of money to do it, and equipment and everything else. And so I convinced GE to do it. And that, of course, is just an enduring picture,
Right.
And I fought. I had to fight within GE for that, because there are a lot of people who thought it was less than the world's best idea. So, yeah.
Well, let me just thank you very much for giving up some of your time during this beautiful afternoon. I really appreciate it.